Hello everybody, this is Ann Mitchell, Ancestry Anne, and I will be substituting for the ever wonderful Krista Cowan, better known as our barefoot genealogist today. She's on a much deserved vacation, so I thought I'd fill in for her. We have many different types of questions that we get at ask@ancestry.com and on our Facebook page, but today I'm going to try something different than the usual genealogy type question. A lot of the questions that we also get are, how can I use the site more effectively to find what it is I'm looking for? And one of the more common ones that I get is, why am I seeing so many records that come from the UK when I'm looking for someone in the US? Or how do I control things so I don't have 15 million, which is not an exaggeration, records? So I thought I would show you some tips and tricks today on how to do this. All right, so this is going to be a live demo, and we all know with live demos, things can go horribly wrong. So hopefully it will all behave itself today. There are two places that you can start your search. The first place would be the home page. We have a little search form here where you can type things in, or you can go to the main search page. I usually start on the main search page, and I'll show you why. If you just click here on search or search all records, it will take you over to the main search page. And it will look something like this. You have your search form and a few other things on this page. And I'm not going to go into the other pieces of the page today in depth, but let me just point them out for you. Recently viewed collections will show you the databases or data collections that you just looked at. This can be really useful as you try and keep track of what you were doing last time you're on the site. Down the side, you'll find a link to the card catalog, and then just different links to our category pages, which is a great jumping off spot. Underneath the search form, you'll find recent searches. These are the recent searches you've done. So again, it's a great place to click through and see what it was you were doing. If you click see more, it will take you over to a longer list so that you can orient yourself that way. And then one of my favorite places, especially when I'm starting in a new place, a country or a state, is to look at one of the place pages. And that's down here. And that's a whole separate Facebook demo, and we'll save that for another time. But let's look at the search form. All right, so this is the search form, and this is what we call basic search or simple search. It doesn't have any filters. You can type in a first name, a last name, any place your ancestor lived, and an estimated birth year. And for those of you who don't like doing math in your head, and I always get confused, so I had the engineers build this, we have a little calculated filter. But the really good stuff is in the advanced form. So I'm going to click down here next to the search button on Show Advanced. And that gives me the advanced form. All right. Now, let's say that you're doing one of those searches for common names. Say John Smith. If you just do a search for John Smith, you get 52 million results. Think about it. We have billions of records. It's somewhere over 6 or 7 billion. I lose track of what the actual number is. And we go out and we search all those records, and we come back with 52 million. Not a big surprise given the number that we've got. But no one can go through 52 million. That's not what you're after. So how do you keep that under control? Let's go back to the main search page. First off, one of the things I tell any of our members when they're doing a search is you want to remember 4 basic things. You want to have 4 basic pieces of information. First name, last name, a location, and hopefully a birth date. Now you can't always have these, but you should be able to come up with some sort of location. You probably have an idea of what state he lived in or something like that. So if you have a birth date, use that. If you have a birth location, use that. But let's say you have a birth date, you know he was born in 1890, and we know that he also lived in Virginia. So I'm going to put birth 1890. I'm not quite sure where he was born. And then I'm going to add an event. I'm going to add lived in. and I'm going to choose Virginia. And I'm going to choose it from the what we call the type ahead. And still, I can do a search, and I still have 11 million records. I'm not going to look through 11 million records. There's also a way to control that. Now, you don't have to pop back to the search form every time. If you look up here in your upper left-hand corner, you can click on Edit Search. It brings up the search form for you, and you can make your changes there and keep searching. This is a lot faster. All right, so let's say that the first problem we're trying to solve is records. You want just records from the U.S. Okay? Go down here to the bottom of the search form, and it will say Collection Priority. Click on it, and instead of using all collections, choose whatever locale that you think is most appropriate. In this case, I'm going to choose United States. Now, if I just choose United States, it will reorder the records and put the U.S. ones first, but that's not what I'm after. I only want to see records from these collections. In other words, if it's not from the U.S., don't show me. So I'm going to click this checkbox here. You'll notice down here I can also restrict it to historical records, family trees, stories, publications, photos, and maps. Let's just, for the sake of argument, go ahead and choose just historical records. You do have to choose one for obvious reasons. Once you've actually chosen these and done a search, these are what we call sticky options. So they will stay there as your chosen options until you actually change them. All right, so I'm going to do a search now. Now I'm down to 5 million. Still not great, but it's a start, right? And everything is now from the U.S. All right, so notice a couple things here. There is no family tree up here at top because I asked for there to be no family tree. You'll notice over here on the collection priority, it says only United States. So all my records will be from data collections that have records from the United States. But how can I make this even smaller? Well, let's go back to Edit Search. All right, so I chose Virginia here as a location. What I'd really like to see is records which only have a residence of Virginia. I don't want to see anything else. I am not interested in anything else. Awesome. So I'm going to click down here on Use Default Settings. Default settings mean just search for whatever and return anything, but put anything from Virginia higher. So I click on Use Default Settings, and you'll notice I have restricted this place exactly, state and adjacent states, country. I can restrict it to any of those. Let's say that I say restrict to this place exactly. Okay? So I'm only going to return records that show a John Smith who was born 1890 or after who lives in Virginia. All right, I've done a search. I'm now down to 163,000. That's a smaller number. I've got more control. But wait, there's more. Let's go back here to Edit Search. Let's say I know that he lived in, let's just choose Goochland County, Virginia. Awesome. I choose that from the type ahead, and you have to choose from the type ahead to get all these great options. I click on Use Default Settings. I can restrict to just that county. But here's my favorite, county and adjacent counties. Why is that my favorite? Because our ancestors did not go necessarily to the courthouse in their county. They went to the courthouse that was closest to them. And that may have been over county lines. A lot of times vitals got filed in over county lines depending on where the data was collected, and whoever was filing it might have dropped it. So you could start and restrict to this place exactly, do a search, and you get 577 records. Or you can say county and adjacent counties, and then you get 10,000 records. So it's searching everything around there. And when we do adjacent counties, that goes over state and country lines. All right, so there we go. Let me show you some fun things you can do with names too that might be useful. Now, while you're not seeing it on, sorry about that. While you're not seeing it on this particular screen, sometimes we will match names that are not, the first names are not what you get here. So how do you control that? All right, so I'm going to click here on Edit Search, and I want to show you about our name filters. If I click here under first and middle names on Use Default Settings, I have Restrict to Exact. If I choose that, I'm just going to match John. I can also choose Phonetic. You remember phonetics from school. Anything that sounds like. All right, so there may be multiple ways of spelling John. You can spell it John, and it would match it because those are phonetically the same. Names with similar meanings. A lot of times in censuses, John was abbreviated JNO. Don't know why that fourth letter was so hard to do, but that's the way they did it. And then you can also choose records where only initials are recorded. So I can go down here, I can choose all three of these. Oh, let's leave off initials just for fun. And then I can do the search. And now I'm down to 253. Let's look at the same thing with last name. Use default settings. I can restrict to exact. We'll come back to sound X in a minute. I can do phonetic and I can do similar. Smith, there's a lot of ways to spell Smith. There's S-M-Y-T-H, S-M-I-T-H, S-M-Y-T-H-E, S-M-I-T-H-E, and some other lovely misspellings are out there in our censuses and our different documents, as you well know. You want to match those things. There's also the names with similar meanings or spellings. Schmidt, let's say you have a German ancestor who went from Schmidt and changed it to Smith. It would match those as well. Now, SoundX was used back in the days when everything was pretty much done on paper, and people would code names to the first letter, and then they used this algorithm. You can look it up on Wikipedia or whatever. And then they came up with 3 numbers, and those were used to encode different names. And then using those lookup tables, they would index it out into the different censuses, but you're going to get some really wacky results there. I only recommend that if you're really desperate and can't find who you're looking for. But you can play around with these and change them to however you want. All right, so I'm going to do a search. And now I'm down to 206. That's a much shorter list. That's something I can actually start to look through. But here, I want to show you one more trick that you can use. If you go over here where it says narrow by category, you can, let's say that you really just want to look for the 1900 census. Click on Census and Voter List. Go down here and click on 1900. It will show you just the 25 records that are in the 1900 census. And if you click here on the actual link and you're patient, there you go, you will see a little bit more information, and that's a pretty easy list to scan, right? You can see what was his relation. You assume he's going to be a son because he's born in 1890, but you never know. Parent or spouse names, whatever. And then you can scroll through this list and find who it is you're looking for. Let's go back up to Census and Voter List. Some people would prefer not to look at the entire list of records like this, but they like to see them just broken up by category so they can pop back, or data collection, and pop back between them. You'll notice up here there's a sort by relevance. If I click on that, I can also say summarize by category. I do that, and here we go. 1920, 1900, 1930, 1910, and Virginia 1910. And then you can click your way into each of those. That's a really useful way to do it. And if you go up here to all categories, it'll break it all down into census and voter list, birth, marriage and death, military, etc. Again, it's just a different way of looking at it, a different way of diving in. But let's go back to relevance for a second. All right. One more thing I want to show you, and that's how you can do a little filtering on the date. Let's say you're still getting too many results. You know this guy was born in 1890, and you can choose exact only. That can be very, very dangerous in censuses, though, because oftentimes years are off by 1 or 2 just because of the way math was done and, trying to figure out, is it after June, all that kind of stuff, when the census was taken. So usually what I do when I want to do an exact on a birth year, when I know that censuses will be involved, is I will put a spread of 1 or 2 years. So what that means is I will match anything between 1888 and 1892. All right? So I go ahead and search, and I'm down to 63 records. So I found ways here to bring my result set back to something I actually really want to look into. It's a nice way to have the ability to get your list down to a small enough set. So let me go back and show you just another example with the same filters. All right, so I want to clear all my filters out. So I'm going to go back to the search page. And here's a nifty little trick. As you can see, I've got everything all set all sticky, and I really don't want it that way. So I'm going to say match all terms exactly. Should set everything back to exact, and then clear it, and it clears out all my filters. One of those nice little tricks. All right, let's say I'm searching for my ancestor, and I swear to you I'm not making this up. Ready Cash. I really have an ancestor named Ready Cash, and I have his really bad signature where he signed it, Ready Cash. He was born about 1800, whoops, and he was born in Virginia. And I know that he lived in Rockbridge County, Virginia. All right. Now, a lot of people like to start in the most exact way possible and then work their way out. And this is probably pretty reasonable. So I'm going to only search for people who were born, or who lived in Rockbridge County, Virginia, who were born in Virginia. I'm going to search, do my plus or 1 or 2. Now names, I know that names are probably the things that are most often wrong. Think of all the different accents, think of all the people who were poor spellers back then, think of all the random transcription errors. There's a lot of room for error there. So I'm going to choose phonetic, similar, and initials. And on last name, I'm going to choose phonetic and similar. All right, so I got everything nice and tight there. I'm going to start with a very specific search. If I don't find what I'm looking for, I'll move out. I still have United States because that's all I care about, and I have historical records. All right, there we go. Ready Cash, and here's one for you, RM Cash, which I have gone in and added a correction for, but that one was a little difficult to find. All right, so what if I go in and now change this exact to county and adjacent? I suddenly find him in 1860 and 1850 because in those years he was actually living in Bodator. And by expanding out your filters, it gives you the ability to start to spread your search out and maybe find who it is you're looking for. So when you're doing a search, remember names, dates, and places. Apply your filters correctly, or at least in different patterns to find who it is you're looking for. I always recommend phonetic and similar to start with on names because that's where some of the most egregious errors happen in the way things were recorded. On birth date, you can tighten it in or out or just use an approximation, that's fine. And then if you want to use the place filters, which will allow you to do adjacency, and then at a state level in adjacent states, you must choose from the type ahead. So you start typing things in, just to remind you. There we go. And you choose from the list. And then that will give you the ability, based on what it is you chose, to apply different types of filters. If you want to restrict to just the United States or just the UK or whatever it is you want to restrict it to, use your collection priority and check show only records from these collections. If you just want historical records, or you just want family trees, or you want some combination of any of the 4 of these, you can also check on these boxes. This gives you the ability to be in control of the records you see. Also remember, down the side here, and I've got a few too many filters on, you will see all the different categories. And if you click through to those, it will show you in a more granular or faceted level the different data collections that you can search on. I can go into 1840 here, and if there was more than one, this is a very uncommon name in our databases, but if there was more than one, you would see a listing. And if you click on this here, you'll get a listing that gives you more data to help you make a better assessment of what you're looking for. Also remember that you can use the sort by relevance, which shows you lots of individual results, or you can use summarize by category, which breaks it down into the different data collections and allows you to click through to each one. Hope this was helpful. I know being able to control my results is the key to finding who it is I'm looking for when it's that elusive record that you just know is out there. We love helping you solve your genealogy problems and breaking through those brick walls when we can, but we also like to show you how you can use the site more effectively. If there are things on the site that you would like us to demonstrate or talk about new ways to look at it, please make sure that you send an email to ask@ancestry.com or post on our Facebook page or go to our blog. We love to answer your questions, and we're just hoping that we can find a new way to help you find who it is that you're looking for. So, our next presentation, or my next presentation as it was, will be, oh, it just says 1 p.m., but that's on Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 10 a.m. Pacific Time. And I'm going to talk about deciphering the undecipherable, reading handwritten historical documents. Some tips and tricks to help you read that horrible handwriting that you see on so many censuses and other documents. The event will be broadcast. You can get to it through our Facebook page or through the livestream.com at Ancestry. You can read my blog and some of our other postings at ancestrysticky-notes.tumblr.com. And if you have questions that you would like to be considered, and they can either be about brick walls that you're personally having, or they can just be about how to use the site more effectively, you can send it to ask@ancestry.com. We do not respond individually to these emails. There's just way too many of them to respond to, but we do read them. I look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Thanks for watching. Happy